let's jump into biodiversity. So, first question is, what is biodiversity? We're going to watch this video. Okay, so we've had a video lecture. We just watched a video as well. A little quiz before class. What is biodiversity? Can you define it in your own words? Discuss with your neighbor. Okay, what do you got? Is it too easy of a question? Biodiversity, right? It's the number of species. Well, if we're going to measure it, we would measure it by, well, there's a few different measures, but one of them might be the number of species in an area. And that can be pretty simple, right? So I've got a plot of land here. Okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to survey all the different kinds of trees. And I'm just going to use numbers. Okay, so we've got tree 1 found in all these spots. Tree 2 is found all over here. And then tree 3, we found one of those. All right, well, let's say I go to another plot, and I'm counting trees as well. And I'm finding lots of species 3. I'm finding lots of species 2, and I'm finding lots of species 1. All right, is the biodiversity the same in these two plots? The number of species per area?
Oh, yeah, because it's still 3.
It is, right? But what information am I missing if I'm just saying calculating diversity? 3 is all by itself, even though there's still the same number of species in each area. All right, so a simple measure is just number of species in the area. But another way to calculate species, right, and then we would call this richness. But another way to calculate biodiversity is called evenness. All right, and for that, I'd be able to calculate, well, the species number and their relative abundance compared to other species in the area. We won't do the actual calculations on that because it's a little bit harder, but just to let you know, there's different ways to measure and keep track of biodiversity and also give you a little bit more information than just how many species are in an area. Because sometimes that might be important. Okay, what are some elements that are important to a biodiversity, to the biodiversity of an area? What are some things that, this one we've got a lot of evenness, this one a little more dominated by specific things. There were some things mentioned in that video. I want you to talk with your neighbor again. All right, so what are some elements of biodiversity that contribute to the diversity of an area? And or what are some things that may hurt the biodiversity of an area? Discuss. So we'll say positive and negative elements. Okay, positive elements. What's that?
Conservation.
Okay, good. So, conserving or preserving an area. To reduce the human influence and exploitation. Okay? All right, what else? There were a few mentioned in the video. Okay, good. There's a genetic component to the ability of the species in an area to thrive and remain sustainably. Okay, anything else? Bless you. Okay, one thing that actually contributes to diversity is mutualism. So preserving important mutualisms actually helps to increase diversity. The coral reef was one mentioned in that video. Corals actually have a mutualistic relationship with small photosynthetic organisms that live inside of them, which makes them more effective in building structures that are important for lots of things in their environment. Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, this one kind of relates to another one that was mentioned in there, the conservation and preservation, but the health of an ecosystem. All right, and this directly relates then to those negative elements that aren't being there, okay? So the more pristine, untouched, conserved, preserved, well-managed an area, generally the better it does with diversity. All right, let's also add keystone or dominant species. All right, so again, in the video it mentioned if one little butterfly goes extinct, it's probably not going to cause the whole forest to collapse in its ecosystem. But let's say a large, very abundant species of tree goes extinct, well, that's going to have a much bigger effect. The more dominant and keystone species, the more species in general that are lost in the environment, generally the health of the ecosystem will decline as well. All right, any other ones you guys discussed in your groups? All right, the negative elements, let's actually... So we have some elements of defining and measuring biodiversity, some positive and negative elements. Big question then. Why do we care about biodiversity? Or why should we maintain a certain level of biodiversity? Discuss this with your neighbor. Right? Why don't we just make everything farms? And that'll give us the food that we need. Discuss. Intermingle. Yeah, I have a buddy in Alabama who did research on shot to gather his data, he would shoot them at night and using night vision goggles from this truck. So you find I guess you got him in the right spot. I don't know. But yeah. Okay, what are some reasons? Why do we care about biodiversity? Yeah, Oliver.
Because the lack of biodiversity affects us as well.
Okay, so ecosystem health. If we have healthy ecosystems, generally we have healthy human populations. Okay, that's good. There's a correlation. Okay, what else? Yeah.
Honestly, I just feel like there's a basic principle of like integrity and stewardship and like just taking care of like leaving something better than you found it, like just the basics like of having taking care of things. We don't want to just go and destroy the world around us. It's just a morality issue or something.
Okay, good. So we have a moral responsibility to take care of the earth, and you can. Maybe there's a religious aspect to that, or maybe you're just concerned with the objectives and concerns of other living things, right? All right, so we have moral responsibility to take care of the biodiversity. All right, what else? Yeah, Carson.
Biodiversity allows, so a healthy ecosystem allows for more goods and services to be produced from it.
Great. Ecosystem. Oop. Goods and services. Right? And some of these are untapped, right? There may be medicines or products or countless other number of things that an ecosystem can provide for us and be developed into things which will help our lives. In addition, these ecosystems and their biodiversity may be doing things, some free ecosystem goods that we don't even recognize right now. So, for example, wetlands, and we got a slide on wetlands. We might talk about them if we get to them. But wetlands, which are like marshes and areas where the water kind of flows into the ocean, river deltas, things like that, often provide a lot of pollution filtering, right? And they filter out water and they make the water clean again. We've gotten rid of or paved over or reduced wetlands across the U.S. and many times over because they're generally not great places to live. You can't build a house on there, you can't farm on there. And we've noticed that we're reducing this ecosystem service. And it's much more difficult to clean the water through our own means than it is to just preserve an area, preserve a wetland, and allow them to do it. Okay, anything else? All right, these are big ones. But yeah, it's not just that like we care more about this animal or this plant or this ecosystem than we care about humans. It's that those things are actually tied to each other. When we care about the environment, the ecosystem, the biodiversity, we're also actually showing that we care about humans and living healthy lives. Okay, let's jump over to this one because those are generally described as 5 different groups as displayed by this acronym HIPPO. All right, H, do you guys remember this from the video lecture? What was H? Okay, you don't remember. All right, habitat destruction. All right, well, why would habitat be destroyed, or how could habitat be destroyed? Yeah.
Humans encroaching on territory.
That's right, yeah. So we want the trees, we'd cut down the trees, or we want to build a farm, we, completely displace whatever's living there, right? You want a place to live, that's going to destroy habitat. All right, invasive species. All right, what are some invasive species we've seen in some of the examples and videos? Pigs, yeah. Pigs are actually an invasive species in the US. I don't think there's very many around here, but you go further south, there's tons of wild pigs. Okay, what was another one? Sorry? Rabbits, right? Yeah.
Was it in the video of a carp?
Carp are an invasive species, yes. Well, except for where they originated in parts of Asia. But what about with the island fox? There was pigs, and then there was golden eagles that came in that weren't supposed to be there, right? Yeah, rats and mice, mosquitoes in a lot of areas. These are kind of associated with humans that brought to a specific area, and they can wreak havoc on the habitats that are there. All right, there's two P's. Can't remember which one was first, so we'll say population. And we're talking about the human population. So as human populations increase, kind of relates to these other ones, you get more habitat destruction, you get more invasive species, and you get more encroachment in those environments. The second P is pollution. All right, pollution can damage the functioning environment for species. So increase in, DDT. We saw that was affecting those bald eagles, which affected the island foxes. Plastic pollution can be found pretty much everywhere in the world now, even in glaciers and snow and rain. There's bits of plastic which are found in there. So the chemicals in plastics can affect the species that live in environments. All right, the last one is O for over exploitation. You're over harvesting. What's an example we've had of over exploitation? I talked about tragedy of the commons, and it relates to the cod fishery of the northern Atlantic. It's been overexploited, and now it's not able to recover. All right, so these five, most things that are affecting biodiversity can be broken down into one of these five different categories. Okay, let's go back. Let's jump. Requires us to do something about invasive species, to pollute less, to exploit less, right? To manage our populations better. And then we'll come back to defining it. Over to. So one of the well, let's actually skip this. We have it. And so somewhere else. One of the things which has helped to preserve biodiversity in the U.S., the Endangered Species Act, which was passed in 1972, I believe, somewhere in the early 70s. All right, who's heard of this act before? All right. What are some animals that are on the endangered or have been on the endangered species list? Okay, yeah, those island foxes were listed. Fortunately, they're no longer listed, but that was one of them. Yeah. Rhinos. Okay, rhinos. Most rhino, I think all rhino species are really on the edge of extinction due to some over-exploitation by humans. All right. Yeah. Panda bears. Yeah. And their habitat's continuing to shrink. Tigers, lots of species and varieties of tigers are endangered.
Bison used to be on there.
Bison used to, all right? They've since had some areas preserved and have flourished. I'm not sure, probably different states they might be endangered or not. All right, how about bald eagles? Yeah, it used to be. Now they're doing a lot better. In fact, I've seen a number of bald eagles around here. You go up and down the Maury River enough times, you'll probably see a bald eagle or two. So I'm not sure if they're off the endangered species list yet, but they're definitely doing a lot better. Bowhead whales, it's another one. If you were in lab, you got some exposure to those. Oh wait, no, this is a different class, sorry. Okay, there's 3 steps that the Endangered Species Act outlines that says it has to be done in order to get something listed, right? So the first step is the listing of the species, right? There's a certain amount of information that you need, and which is covered in the second and third step. Second is the critical habitat. All right, and then the third step is a recovery plan. All right, the critical habitat is important because in order to preserve what few remaining individuals of this species may be left, we need to understand, well, what parts are they living in, and thus what parts should we leave undisturbed? And if we can find all the places where this species are currently existing, then we can preserve those spaces and prevent them from being further encroached, and or maybe increase that critical habitat, preserve, conserve, restore habitat so that they can have more places to live. And that's generally part of the recovery plan. Okay, so has anyone heard of conflict which has occurred because of the Endangered Species Act? The spotted owls in the Northwest? Yeah, what happened there?
They set off a bunch of land that was no longer
Good.
on, and then a lot of people lost their jobs.
Right, so part of the recovery plan for these spotted owls was that they found this critical habitat was forests with really big trees, really dense trees. And in the Pacific Northwest, there was a very abundant logging industry. There still is, but not as abundant as it used to be. And so once this species was listed, they said, all right, well, you guys can't cut down all these trees anymore. And so the logging industry in the Pacific Northwest in a lot of areas halted, stopped, was reduced significantly, and so a lot of people lost their jobs. And so a lot of people are really mad at this owl and or the people that helped to put it on the list because they had to find a different job, a different place to live. All right, any other ones? Okay, so I've worked a little bit with bats. I have friends that do surveys for bats every summer for things like mines that are, if somebody wants to go into an area and explore it for a possible mining operation, or maybe to put windmills or other sort of industrial things in a specific area, they have to first survey the area to see if there's any endangered species in there. And so I have friends that have gone in and they will survey for bats. And if they catch an endangered bat, they have to report that, and then they have to explain perhaps where they think it's coming from. If there's too many of these endangered bats, then they might not be able to do whatever they want to do, exploit that land. And so listing endangered species, it sounds great, but it has also caused a lot of conflict in people that want to develop or manage or use land in an area for a specific reason. And that's where you get a lot of this, like, well, I'm just trying to feed my family, and your stupid spotted owl is preventing me from being able to make a living or whatever it is. All right, so let's take a couple minutes, you and your neighbors. I want you to look for endangered species list success stories. So, species that have been removed, other than the ones we've already talked about. So, bald eagle, doing fine. Island foxes, okay. Are there other species out there where this has worked? We've been able to create a plan which has saved a species and allowed them to rebound and flourish. Okay, so how's it working? Are those rhinos doing good? They head back to being flourishing rhino populations? No, the rhinos aren't doing well. They haven't been able to come back. This is a U.S. law. Of course, there are international similar laws where other countries are trying to preserve species, and that's, there's no rhinos in the U.S. Not that they went extinct, it's just they never lived here. But all right, what are some success stories? Giant pandas, okay. Also not in the U.S., but they're doing a lot better. There were a lot of zoo programs. They'll breed them. A lot of times, that's part of the recovery plan. We saw this with the island foxes. We're gonna go capture all the ones that we can. We're gonna create a breeding program, and hopefully increase the genetic diversity, and then perhaps release them back into the wild. Yeah, okay.
North American gray wolf, I believe it only had 300 wolves left in the continental U.S., and they managed to save them.
Okay, great. Yeah, wolves have been reintroduced into a lot of areas. It's another area where there's conflict. If you have sheep or cows or any sort of pasture animal, and they just released a pack of wolves in the forest next to your farm, very likely some of your sheep or cows or whatever will get killed by your wolves. And then what do? When they're federally endangered, you're not allowed to kill them, right? If they keep killing your cows, right? Yeah, maybe. Well, they do have people that are wildlife managers that actually will be called and help with that situation. Sometimes they do have to kill the wolves or a wolf that keeps on doing it. Okay, what are some other ones? Stellar sea lions. All right, so we've had some sea lion populations come back. Elvis? Some sea turtles are doing much better. We've created programs where you can go and find sea turtle nests, mark them, protect them, keep them from, in a lot of places, the sea turtle eggs were a delicacy, so they'd be harvested and people would eat them. But by kind of marking and protecting and making sure that people are aware that these things are federally listed, they've been able to recover. At least the green sea turtles are doing pretty well, pretty abundant. All right, so would you say this program is working, that it's good, it's done a lot of good stuff, preserved and allowed a lot of species to come back? Okay, you support it? All right, some people might say you're going to see it hasn't done enough. All right, so here's an article. Under the Endangered Species Act, only 1% of those species that have been listed have actually been delisted. And this is fact checked by PolitiFact. This is just kind of a headline that has been going around and is used for different purposes. What do you think of this? So there's a few different ways you could take this information.
Well, I mean, the way that they phrased it, some species could have been endangered and then recovered without needing, a lot of excessive help. So, like, maybe there were ones listed that they counted in their statistics. But
Yeah, so there's kind of this spillover effect. If we are saving 1%, there's probably a lot of other species that we didn't list that are cohabitating with this one that are probably also doing a lot better. So this doesn't capture all of the good that is done by preserving a species, for sure. Yeah.
On top of that, 1% is better than nothing at all.
Okay.
If you think about the total of endangered species, I just looked it up, apparently there's 41,415 different endangered species right now.
So how many? What's 1% of that? 41,000. Move the decimal. So that's 410 species. That's still a pretty good number, right? And if it wasn't there, could you say that those 410 species would have been saved? Or how about the protection of those 44,000 other ones? They're at least still getting some level of protection, right? Okay. Other thoughts on this? Anyone think, well, it's not working? Why have it? Let's just get rid of it. No, what would you say to that argument? Look, it's not working. We don't need this. They're going to die anyway. Discuss that with your neighbors.
we're all going to die.
Fair enough. Okay, responses to, well, it's not working, let's do away with it. Thoughts?
It obviously is working, it's just working slowly.
Okay, maybe we need to give it more time. It is helping 1% a little bit, yeah.
And if we aren't trying to help, then are we following endangered species? Because they all kind of affect each other in the long term.
Right, yeah. I mean, that 44,000 could easily be 100,000 if we didn't have something in there and a lot of things helping it. All right, any other thoughts? What about making it better? Right, maybe, okay, it is not working very well. Let's strengthen it and make it, put more resources and effort into helping these 44,000 species that are listed. Any resistance to that thought? Yeah.
I feel like people will have more issues because the more things that we do to preserve the environment and different species, the more it's going to take away from how easy it is for us to just exist and live and use our resources, because there's a lot of things that we're going to have to either sacrifice or pull back on, and people don't have that easy of a business.
Right. We've already seen a lot of conflict in the 44,000 we've had, and the 1% we've allowed to, and a lot of resources. I mean, with the island fox, that was not a cheap thing to a small intervention that needed to be made to save those island fox. There was a lot that went into preserving those. A lot of helicopters, a lot of hunters, a lot of resources. So this is an inconvenient thing to think about biodiversity and to preserve it. Well, that requires us to change some things. The more conflict, the more you strengthen a measure like this. Whether or not we should is a hard question then to answer. I think where it's at is a great place to start, but it does perhaps need some reevaluation. Okay, we just have a few minutes left, so I want to do this one kind of update. Man, that didn't come through very clear. It was much better when I put it in there. All right. For a number of years, the United Nations has been hosting a biodiversity conference. So, United Nations, of course, is a worldwide, not every country in the world is part of the United Nations, but a lot of them, most of them, definitely the most developed countries, most of the most developed countries are part of the United Nations. And so conferences that the United Nations puts on, generally have a global impact and infuse a global response to a problem. So the fact that they're having a biodiversity conference is saying, all right, biodiversity is of worldwide concern and probably needs worldwide international efforts in order to really have an impact on helping this situation. So there was a conference, I believe, in November of 2022. Who heard of this? Saw anything on the news about it? Not very many? All right, well, I want you to figure out, all right, what did they do? What were the results of this conference? Give you a few minutes to look it up. Okay. 2022 UN Biodiversity Conference. I can't remember where it was. I think it was somewhere in Africa. They all get together and say, this is a problem. What are we going to do about it? There are lots of ideas thrown around. There was at least one major thing which came out of it. Okay, what were the results? Anything happen?
We have a plan to try to safeguard the rights of Indigenous people and give them more recognition for the things that they've done.
Okay, it's been found that generally speaking, conservation efforts are best when the people that are living in that area are invested. And indigenous people who have been living there generally for thousands of years are more invested than people that just have moved there or colonized or whatever. So, great. The recognition of indigenous people and their efforts and making sure that those things are highlighted, and then I think that can lead to more conservation. Yeah.
I think they also started, they have 23 targets that they're trying to achieve by 2030.
All right, so we've got goals or targets to reach before 2030. All right, that's only 7 years away. So they want nations to also, take these goals to their legislatures and make laws and policies that help with biodiversity. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, this planet said that they want to put 30% of the planet and 30% of degraded ecosystem under protection.
All right, so more protected areas. All right, again, that's going to be we have this goal as a international body. Those things then have to go back to the nations and be like, all right, well, what are we gonna protect? What are we conserve? What are we gonna do better? All right, was there anything about a fund? Didn't they create a fund? That was kind of the greatest achievement, or publicized as one of the best achievements from. So they made a biodiversity fund. All right, that means countries are going to contribute to this fund. And then countries, organizations will be able to apply to this fund to reach some of these measures that have been outlined by their goals and targets and other things. Okay, that's all we have time for today. Biodiversity is an important thing. I personally would want to live in a place where, you know, our forests are maintained and kept in a condition that allows for the most species possible to exist. I know that's going to require a lot of changes by us from humans, because we're the ones affecting it. But I think it's an important and good thing for all of us. All right. See you guys on Monday. We'll do a review. Again, Kahoot with, I don't know what the prize is going to be, but it's going to be worth it. Okay?